When was the last time you got your laptop checked? Not for viruses, but hardware maintenance, stuff like dusting up the insides. In this video, we shall be taking apart my laptop and checking out how big of a mess we have in there. If GTEL can't give us something to take apart, then I'll just take apart my own stuff instead. But this will not just be a maintenance video because we have some parts we want to replace and upgrade. So I have a Lexar 500GB M.2 NVMe SSD that will be replacing the 128GB SSD that I currently have for a main drive. I have this fancy looking case made from Ugreen with a very impressive build quality. It's all metal with a satin finish to it and it feels properly solid. I'll be using it to store the 128GB SSD I'm removing from this PC, as well as turn it into a 128GB external drive. Lastly, we shall be swapping out the old battery and putting in a new one. Let's bring out the toolkits and get this show on the road. But before we break our nails, do subscribe to this channel, like this video and share it so that I can keep making such videos for you. My laptop is a 2017 HP Envy 17T and I have had it for 2 years now. First step with working with electronic stuff is you have to ground yourself. You can do this by wearing an electrostatic discharge bracelet, or if you don't have one of those lying around, you can touch a water tap or a metal door frame. This just ensures you do not send static electricity from your body to components of your computer and kill your computer. Next up, and this is specific to this computer, you open the CD drive and leave it open. Then you shut down the computer. Once it's completely turned off, you close the lid and turn it over. The reason why we left the CD drive open is we have a screw holding the back cover that can only be reached if the CD drive is open. I figured that one out the hard way. There are a total of 8 screws holding the back plastic plate to the rest of the laptop. The 4 exposed screws are T5 screws, then the other 4 are the cross-style screws or Phillips screws. As you can see, all the screws are of different sizes, so it's very important to keep them organized. I usually make a screw map away from my work area where I arrange the screws according to the position I removed them from. My buddy Rufaro goes a step further and takes photos just for good measure. Again, this next step is specific to my laptop. You want to remove the back cover starting from the edge with the hinges. It's the easiest way to remove the back cover, and once it is free, you can continue with the left and right sides, and lastly, the edge opposite the hinges. If you manage to do all of this with your fingernails still intact, congratulations! Your hands are well trained. There we go, it looks a little bit dusty, but we shall clean it in a second. For now, let's quickly check out what we're looking at. This is the motherboard where everything is connected to. This here is the mechanical drive and its size is 1TB. This little guy over here is a 128GB M.2 NVMe SSD that we shall be removing in a second. These two are the RAM sticks, which are 8GB each, so that's what 16GB of RAM looks like if anyone was curious. This big black thing is the heat sink, which removes the heat from the processors to the radiator over there. This radiator is then cooled by this fan and we shall be removing that as well to see how it looks. This is the battery, and yes, it's built in, which is bad. If you look closely, the battery is all swollen up and it's pushing against the touchpad as well as the bottom plastic cover. In fact, if you look here, it actually put so much stress on the back cover that it cracked on this screw right over there. The touchpad is also getting so much pressure from the battery that it's now malfunctioning. A quick lesson on this battery: it is called the lithium-ion battery, and this swelling is caused by a number of issues, with the most common one being overcharging. That's pretty much keeping the laptop connected to the charger well after the battery has reached 100%. Since we are already at the battery, we can remove it because that is the next step: removing all power sources before you begin to work on the machine. If we compare the old battery and the new one, you can see how swollen the old one is. The swelling is usually a buildup of hydrogen gas which burns violently. So if something were to poke a hole on this battery, a simple spark would pretty much make it explode. So if the battery is swollen, you need to replace it as soon as possible. Now that the battery is out, we can remove the CD drive. Careful not to close it, otherwise you will have a hard time putting back the back cover. The RAM sticks can also go out. The 2 drives can be removed as well because we are taking it all apart, aren't we? Then we unscrew the heatsink to expose the processors, which are the two green chips over there. The big one is the 8th gen Intel Core i7 processor, and the smaller one is a dedicated GPU, the NVIDIA GeForce MX150. Those two black chips you see there are the 4 GB of dedicated video memory for the GPU. Okay, we're getting carried away over here. Anyways, the gray paste you see on both processors is called thermal paste, and it's a special paste that conducts heat well. And its purpose is to fill in the gap between the top part of this silver section of the processors and the surface of the heatsink, so that as much heat as possible can leave the processors as quickly as possible. A cooler processor works faster, and a faster processor means a faster computer. Simple. I'll be removing this 2-year-old paste and putting some fresh new paste because, as you can see, it's now a cake and not a paste, so it's not as effective as it was back then. Last but not least, we remove the fan, and remember to keep your screws organized. This is one of the easiest laptops to work on because everything is easily accessible and the screws are very few. Now I'll use a dry cloth first to clean the motherboard. Be gentle here and give light swabs, otherwise you can pull off a resistor or a capacitor and kill your motherboard. If you're feeling fancy, you can even use some methylated spirit and cotton to clean it up. Do the same for the bottom cover as well as the rest of the bits we removed. When you are dusting the RAM sticks and this SSD, make sure you are always touching the edges. Always. Avoid touching the chips or the contacts. Also, before you touch them, go to that door frame or tap and touch it again just to be safe. Time to apply some thermal paste. You really do not need much because the gap we're trying to fill is super small. A couple of dabs here and a couple of dabs there and it should be enough. We put the heatsink back on and then we put back the fan, screw it in and connect it back to the motherboard. Add the rest of the stuff, ensuring it all sits nice and well. If there are some bits with dust that the cloth and brushes could not get to, we can use some sticky stuff, but again, gentle dabs. We don't want to lose a resistor or a capacitor or something. Let's see what we have now. On the maintenance side, we cleaned off the dust, we applied new thermal paste and replaced a faulty battery with a new one. Dust reduces performance of a radiator. It reduces the rate at which the radiator can remove heat from the processor. Old thermal paste is hard and so it cracks and leaves gaps here and there, meaning it also is not as effective at removing heat from the processor to the heatsink. This is dangerous because it means when your processor heats up, the fans won't be effective and your processors can overheat, and in a serious case, they can actually burn. So every year or so, it's cool to just put new thermal paste and keep that contact nice and solid. The old battery was swollen and it was now literally breaking the computer. It now also posed a potential risk of exploding if something were to puncture it and release the built-up gases. Replacing it with a new one means better battery life, like the day I bought it, and also I can now use my trackpad again. Finally! On the upgrade side, we only did one, and that is upgrading the main drive from 128GB to 500GB. This means now I can run all my heavy apps like Photoshop without getting that annoying scratch disks a full message. It also means I can move some apps to run from the SSD, and this alone will make them run faster than when I was running them from the mechanical drive. All in all, my PC should be faster and should be able to last longer now since we have made sure all the dust has been removed and we have also upgraded the storage with faster one. If you want a review of this laptop, I have placed a link in the description. I have also placed links of the parts that I bought in the description as well for those that need to know where to get them. If you are watching this video, then everything worked out great. It took me a while to make this one. So really, if you found it helpful, just like it and share it with everyone. I'll be happy to answer every question in the comments, so feel free to ask. Thanks a ton for watching. Catch you next time.